My sister didn't invite me to her wedding, but she invited all my friends. To get back at her, my friends showed up wearing crazy outfits. You see, as the older sibling, I was always expected to take care of Gigi from the time we were kids. My parents wanted me to clean up after her, help with her homework, walk her home from school, and play with her because they were too busy with work. Even after work, my mom would come home tired and ask me to read Gigi a bedtime story. Gigi didn't make it any easier for me. She often said mean things and didn't understand social cues. She would say things without thinking, which got me into trouble. For example, my parents made me take Gigi with me whenever I went out with my friends or to their birthday parties. One time, Gigi came with me to my best friend's 13th birthday party. We had all given my friend gifts we bought with our pocket money, and she was very happy. She also opened a gift from her grandparents, a Barbie dollhouse. Even though we were a bit old for Barbies, my friend loved it and felt sentimental about it. Suddenly, Gigi started giggling, and when we all looked at her, she said it was a dumb gift. I looked at my friend, feeling alarmed and embarrassed by Gigi's behavior. My friend looked heartbroken, while Gigi kept giggling. I apologized to my best friend and told her I was going to take Gigi home. I felt so embarrassed and upset that my sister was mean to the birthday girl for no reason. When we got home, I asked Gigi why she did that. She just smiled and said she was only saying what everyone was thinking, and it wasn't her fault if my friend got hurt. I was so angry and disappointed with her. Later, I told my parents about it, hoping they would talk to Gigi and explain that what she did was wrong. Instead, they lectured me about being a better sibling. They said I shouldn't be embarrassed by Gigi and that I should stop being friends with people who can't handle the truth. I was shocked by their reaction. Looking back, I realized they always made me feel like I was wrong for being upset, just to make me accept my sister's behavior and take care of her, while she never faced any consequences. As I grew older, I started to rebel and stand up to my parents when they tried to make me take care of Gigi or bring her to events with my friends. I would tell them that Gigi could hang out with her own friends or that they could take care of her because I needed my own time. They'd accused me of leaving her out and not being a good sister because Gigi didn't have any friends. It was true that Gigi had no friends, but it was her own fault. She would say mean things to everyone in the name of being honest, which hurt people's feelings. This also meant Gigi often sat alone during lunch, as no one wanted to sit with her. So my parents forced me to include her at my table, which I hated. After many lectures from my parents, I eventually let Gigi join me and my friends. When I went to college, I finally experienced true freedom. My parents initially wanted me to attend a nearby college, but I worked hard and through a scholarship, got accepted into a prestigious university hundreds of miles away. My mother begged me not to go, saying that Gigi would miss me and that I needed to take care of my sister and be a good big sister. But I didn't care. I moved into my dorm and never looked back. I was so happy to be away from my family that even during vacations or long weekends, I never went back home. It felt like I could breathe for the first time, and I didn't want to return to the suffocation at home. I was part of a Facebook group with my school friends, and I had added Gigi to the group since she often hung out with us. In this group, Gigi would sometimes ask if anyone wanted to hang out, but no one ever replied. Some of my friends had moved away for college like I did, but a few still lived in our hometown and weren't interested in spending time with her. I knew that my friends only hung out with Gigi because my parents made me take her along. Now that I wasn't around, they had no reason to hang out with her. I didn't blame them since Gigi never stopped being mean with her comments and I respected their decisions. Still, Gigi kept asking people in the group to hang out. I also heard from some friends that Gigi would call them directly, trying to see if they wanted to meet up, but they either made excuses or ignored her calls. Meanwhile, Gigi and I hardly talked. We had always been forced to be together, and I suspect she didn't like me much either. Now that I was away from home, we rarely messaged each other. My parents would sometimes call to update me about her life and tell me I should visit soon and spend time with Gigi, but I ignored them. During my final year of college, I went back home for a school reunion. I was excited to see my old friends and catch up with everyone. When Gigi found out, she insisted on joining me to hang out with my friends. This time, I firmly told her that these were my friends from school, and she had no right to intrude on this event. My parents tried to argue, but I shut them down quickly. I told them that Gigi needed to have her own friends in life without always tagging along with me, as we were not kids anymore. I thought that would be the end of it. At the reunion, I was immersed in nostalgia and laughter as we shared stories and caught up. We reminisced about school pranks and inside jokes. I was having a great time with everyone. As my friends and I sat down for lunch, Gigi walked into the restaurant uninvited. I was shocked and frustrated because I had clearly told her to stop interfering in my life, but here she was. Gigi approached our table and before I could say anything, loudly declared, "Oh, I missed you guys." The awkward silence that followed was palpable. Everyone looked confused, not expecting her to show up. Oblivious to the discomfort, Gigi pulled up a chair and started talking about how long it had been since she had seen everyone. I was furious at her nerve to join my friends right in front of me at an event where she wasn't invited. My friends, trying to be polite, made small talk with her. I could see from everyone's faces how uncomfortable they all felt, and we couldn't talk freely. After lunch, I took Gigi aside and asked her to go back home. She dismissed me, saying it wasn't a big deal and I should get over myself because these were her friends too. Her nonchalant attitude was really getting on my nerves, and I was starting to see red, so I decided to teach her a lesson. I brought her back to my friends and decided to address the situation publicly to get their opinion, hoping Gigi would finally understand how embarrassing her behavior was. I asked them if they thought it was appropriate for my little sister to come uninvited to our reunion. To my relief, some of my friends echoed my sentiments and told Gigi they felt uncomfortable with her since they weren't close to her. My school best friend, trying to smooth things over, told Gigi they could hang out with her another day, but for today, they would prefer it to be just the old classmates hanging out. Gigi looked embarrassed hearing their reactions, and I couldn't help but feel satisfied watching her learn a valuable lesson about boundaries. She shot me an angry glance, clearly blaming me for this fiasco, and solemnly walked out. That night, after I returned home from the reunion party, my parents confronted me about what happened. They told me I had embarrassed Gigi in front of everyone by kicking her out. I explained that no one wanted her there and she had barged into our reunion uninvited, so she needed to apologize to me. But my parents insisted that she is my sister and I needed to be more understanding. My mother told me how Gigi always finds it difficult to make friends and that no one wants to hang out with her, so she was excited to meet my friends, knowing they had always been sweet to her. I retorted that I had been understanding about Gigi for years, but my friends were only nice to her because of me, and they clearly didn't want to be around her otherwise. Gigi, who had perhaps been listening to our argument, barged into the room, saying that everyone liked her and that I was trying to take her friends away from her. I started laughing and told her that if that were true, then why didn't a single friend hang out with her over the years whenever she messaged in our group chat or called them? Gigi looked hurt and tried to justify that everyone was just busy and it didn't mean anything. I retorted that they were only busy avoiding her because they weren't really her friends. I know it was a harsh thing to say, but I wanted Gigi to know the truth. My dad started saying I was being selfish and should apologize to Gigi, but I stood my ground. I insisted that Gigi had crossed a boundary by barging into our reunion uninvited, and it was time she faced the consequences of her actions. This was the final straw that broke my relationship with Gigi. Since then, we never spoke to each other, nor did we try to be nice whenever we met over the holidays. Years later, when I was getting married, my parents forced me to invite her, saying how bad Gigi would feel about not getting invited, and that they didn't want the rest of the family to know there was bad blood between us. I reluctantly invited her as a guest, but my parents wanted me to make her a bridesmaid. I put my foot down and threatened to uninvite her if they kept pushing me. Fortunately, I have a loving and supportive partner, my husband Kyle, who understood the dynamics of my relationship with my sister and never questioned why I didn't want to involve her more in our wedding. Over the years, I've been polite to Gigi, but we never really bonded beyond that. Now, on to the recent incident. Gigi got married a week ago to Rick, who is 15 years older than her. They met while she was working at a restaurant. Gigi struggled to hold down a job for long and often talked to my parents about wanting to get married, so Rick seemed like her knight in shining armor. She was thrilled about settling down at last. When she sent out her wedding invitations, I found out from my cousins and parents that I didn't receive one. It wasn't surprising since Gigi and I didn't have a good relationship anyway. However, I was surprised when Gigi sent out a virtual invitation to all my friends on the same Facebook group where I had added her years ago. I had almost forgotten about the group, as hardly anyone uses Facebook anymore. I was taken aback that she would invite my friends to her wedding when none of them even spoke to her. Some of these friends reached out to me to ask if I would be attending as well. I told them that Gigi hadn't invited me, which shocked them, considering she invited them. I also mentioned that I didn't mind if they chose to attend, as I had no relationship with her whatsoever. I think news spread fast among my friends because many of them messaged me saying it was rude for my sister to invite them, but not me. They remembered how I used to take care of her when we were growing up. I tried to tell them I was okay with not being invited, but because Gigi invited all my friends publicly and left me out, it seemed like she did it on purpose. I talked to my parents about it, reminding them how they made me invite her to my wedding even though we weren't close. But my mom said it was Gigi's choice and they couldn't do anything about it. Feeling hurt, I told them how she invited all my friends, making everyone wonder why she left me out. But my parents stuck up for her, saying they were her friends too and Gigi would love if they came to her wedding. I realized there was no use talking to my family about it. I decided not to bring up the conversation again. On the day my sister got married, I spent time with my husband and son. Kyle knew I was feeling a bit down, so he took us to the beach, and we had a good time. I switched off my phone because I like having tech-free days when I'm with my loved ones. When I got home, I saw I had a bunch of messages and missed calls from my sister and parents. Confused, I opened the last message from Gigi, which had a picture attached. She blamed me for ruining her day and said she'd never forgive me. The picture showed some of my friends, and I gasped. They were wearing long, colorful dresses that looked really silly. One had a fancy bow around her neck, and another was wearing a summer hat. I couldn't understand why anyone would wear those kinds of outfits to a wedding. It looked more like a costume party than a wedding, and I couldn't help but laugh at how ridiculous they looked. My sister called me, clearly upset about what happened at her wedding. She started yelling at me, saying I ruined everything. I tried to explain that I didn't know why my friends dressed like that. She kept blaming me, saying I was jealous and told them to dress that way. I felt bad, but I didn't understand why she blamed me when I had nothing to do with it. My parents also messaged me, saying they were disappointed and I should have stopped my friends. But that's not fair at all. I'm not sure if I should explain or let them keep blaming me. I think maybe my friends dressed like that because they knew my sister didn't invite me. I feel like it's partly my fault for not explaining better to them. Am I to blame for my friends dressing up like that at my sister's wedding? After talking with Kyle, we both agreed I should clear things up with my family. But first, I needed to ask my friends about their choice of dressing at Gigi's wedding. By now, pictures from the wedding were all over social media, and a lot of people knew what happened. I got my friends together on a video call and asked them about it. To my surprise, they admitted they dressed up as a way to protest against Gigi always trying to be part of our group. Since there wasn't a specific dress code mentioned in the invitation, they saw it as a chance to make a statement. They explained how they were tired of Gigi always trying to join our group, even talking badly about me behind my back sometimes. They hoped she'd understand their boundaries, but she never did. When Gigi excluded me from the wedding invitation, they saw it as the perfect time to teach her a lesson. It was clear that my friends saw through Gigi's actions and always saw her more as a bother than a real friend. Their quirky outfits at her wedding were their way of showing their frustration and subtly telling Gigi they didn't want to be her friend. When I told them how Gigi blamed me for what happened, they were genuinely sorry. They'd offered to send her a message saying it was all their idea, so I wouldn't be blamed. I was grateful for their support and told them I didn't blame them for what happened. I understood why they did what they did. My main concern was making sure Gigi and my parents understood the message they were trying to send about respecting boundaries and not blaming me. Since then, my friends have sent Gigi an apology in our Facebook group, saying it was their idea to dress up like that, and I didn't know anything about it. I know Gigi saw the message because instead of replying to them, she called me and started accusing me of trying to avoid responsibility and manipulating my friends. She said her wedding had become a joke in the family and those silly pictures were all over social media. I understood Gigi's frustration, so I politely explained to her that she couldn't blame me for what my friends wore to her wedding when I wasn't even invited. I told her that my friends admitted I had nothing to do with their plan, but she still didn't believe me. I couldn't change her mind. I assured her I didn't want to ruin her wedding, and my friends were just frustrated with her intruding over the years. Despite my explanation, Gigi wasn't willing to accept it, so I ended the call quickly. My husband thinks my parents can help, but I doubt it until Gigi believes the truth. I'll talk to them this weekend and see if they can help straighten things out. I felt pretty let down after talking to my parents. Instead of helping, things got even worse. When I explained what happened, they unexpectedly blamed me. They said I should have controlled my friends and somehow made them dress differently. I tried to tell them I had no idea what my friends were planning, but they wouldn't listen. Like always, they took Gigi's side, saying I should have warned her about my friends. I was baffled and tried to explain that I wasn't involved in their plan, but they, just like Gigi, refused to believe me. Feeling frustrated and misunderstood, I realized that fixing things with my family would be harder than I thought. The strained relationship between Gigi and me, along with my parents' bias towards her, made it seem like a fair solution was out of reach. Kyle, who came with me for support, stood up for me. He told my parents directly that I wasn't the kind of person to betray someone, especially my own sister. He reminded them that on Gigi's wedding day, we weren't even there because we weren't invited and had no idea what was happening. He said it wasn't right for my family to blame me without any proof. My mom argued, suggesting I might have encouraged my friends to dress that way. But Kyle explained that I had told my friends I was okay with not being invited, so what they did wasn't our fault. I could tell my parents weren't going to change their minds, so I told them if they didn't believe me, there was no point in continuing the conversation. I also said I was tired of being blamed for everything and that I was cutting Gigi out of my life for good. My mom protested, but my dad stopped her. With that decision made, we left my parents' place to give ourselves some distance from the situation, hoping they'd eventually see the truth once their emotions settled. Unfortunately, they haven't reached out yet, so it seems they're sticking to their beliefs. It's disheartening to see how they clearly favor my sister despite all I've done for her. I'm not sure what the future holds, but if my parents are choosing to support her, I'll respect their decision, even if it's disappointing. For now, I've blocked Gigi and plan to keep it that way. Update 3. It's been 5 months since my last update, and a lot has happened. First of all, I've been going to therapy. Many of you suggested this, given my childhood trauma. Therapy has been life-changing. I feel much lighter now, knowing how to express myself and confident that I did the right thing by standing up for myself. Regarding Gigi's wedding incident, my parents did try to reach out to me at times over the months. However, instead of addressing the issue or apologizing for blaming me, they acted like nothing had happened between us. I soon realized they only wanted to connect with my son, their only grandchild. So I cut them off. I don't want them treating my child the way they treated me. Meanwhile, Kyle and I focused on our lives, finding support in each other. Kyle has been amazing throughout this, understanding how hard it was for me to cut off my parents but never making me feel alone in that decision. We're planning a vacation with our son for the upcoming holiday. From this experience, I've learned that if you have toxic family members, it's crucial for your mental health to remove them from your life. It's not worth letting them poison your life. Someday you'll find someone who loves and supports you for who you are.